It's fair to say there's a hell of a lot to unpack from the Turkish Grand Prix. We had Valtteri Bottas taking a dominant and long overdue win, we had pit wall controversy for Lewis Hamilton, a double podium for Red Bull with their special one-off livery, and Ferrari back on form, as well as a surprisingly unchaotic wet race. So let's not waste any more time, let's get into the ups and downs from this weekend's Grand Prix, and if you like what you see, please subscribe to Formula Pulse for more content just like this. Let's start with the race winner Valtteri Bottas with possibly one of his best performances for Mercedes, and he did it on World Porridge Day, which makes it all the more fitting. Now, I think it's fair to say that Bottas hasn't always been great in the wet. In fact, in Turkey last year, he was absolutely awful while Hamilton won the race. But today, he absolutely bossed it from start to finish. Leading off the line, he always seemed to have the gap to Verstappen under control, and by the end of the race, he held a completely comfortable lead. The only small moment of doubt may have been when Charles Leclerc took the lead by staying out on his worn inters, but Bottas quickly closed him down and clinically passed the Ferrari into the first corner. He also did the job for the team that he hasn't been doing lately. He took points off of Verstappen to help Hamilton's title challenge. He looked as assured and as comfortable as he ever has in a Mercedes, so it's just a shame that this kind of performance has come too late to have any chance of saving his seat for next season. But since the announcement has been made, he's looked like a different driver with a weight off of his shoulders, and if this is his last win for Mercedes, which isn't unfeasible as he may be required to play second fiddle to Hamilton in the run-in, then this will surely go down as one of his best drives, an utterly dominant victory in wet conditions ahead of a wet weather expert like Max Verstappen. It's also a deserved place for Red Bull in the up column this weekend. They never really looked to have the pace to match Mercedes, so a second and third on a track where Mercedes had the upper hand is not a bad day's work at all. Verstappen usually excels in these kind of conditions, but he never really looked like having the pace to catch and pass Bottas today, and he was pretty happy to take that second place when all was said and done, especially with Hamilton down in fifth. This gives Verstappen back the championship lead, but only by 6 points with 6 races left to run. I also think this was one of Sergio Perez's strongest drives for Red Bull, and it included some excellent defending against Hamilton when he was at the peak of his charge early on from P11 on the grid, and it really stopped Lewis from getting anywhere near the podium after that, with Perez joking after the race that Verstappen will owe him a few tequilas. Red Bull got the strategy right by stopping earlier than Hamilton and Leclerc, and Perez took advantage by passing the Ferrari driver late on to claim third whilst he was suffering with graining. They were also pleased to get the result on the weekend that they were honouring Honda with their special white livery, which I have to say I really liked, and it's great when we get these one-off liveries because they never disappoint. The only worry for Red Bull coming out of this weekend was Mercedes' pace advantage, which Verstappen has said, with only a 6-point lead, it's quite concerning that they were so far behind Mercedes on pace. So it'll be interesting to see in Austin who has that pace advantage on a different type of circuit. Okay, now we can move on to the most controversial talking point of the weekend. Lewis Hamilton was furious in and after the race with Mercedes' strategy call that left him only 5th. Hamilton was adamant that they should have stayed out, while Mercedes insisted on bringing him to change tyres with just 8 laps remaining. Hamilton had done an excellent job to work his way through the field early on, and then he found himself in 3rd place once the leaders had pitted. And in the end, almost everybody except Esteban Ocon decided to make a pit stop before the end of the race. So should Mercedes have brought him in, or should they have left him out? Personally, I think they were damned if they did, and they were damned if they didn't, and they actually left it way too late to make that pit stop. By making the stop, they encountered the same graining that affected Leclerc, which meant Hamilton wasn't able to chase after the places ahead of him and ended up defending from Gasly in the final few laps. And the car that did stay out, Esteban Ocon, was very slow in the last few laps, and he was almost passed by the Alfa Romeos in the closing stages because he had no grip at all. And he said after the race he felt like he was 1 lap away from a puncture. Therefore, I think the mistake that Mercedes made was not pitting Hamilton at the same time as Verstappen, Perez and Bottas. He'd shown good pace as he came through the field earlier on, and I think he would have had the pace to challenge both Perez and Leclerc and possibly take a podium. But by leaving him out, there really wasn't a good outcome that would have come from that. He either would have dropped off the pace when the tyres went, or he would have experienced the graining which he did in the end. But when all is said and done, 5th isn't a bad result. He's only 6 points away from Verstappen in the championship, and the silver lining is that Mercedes had a big pace advantage over Red Bull this weekend, which they'll be hoping they can carry forward. He's also taken that engine penalty, so he should be clear on that until the end of the season. All it takes is 1 win and the championship would swing back in the other direction. Charles Leclerc suffered the same graining issues as Hamilton late on, but I still think Ferrari deserve a tick in the up column this weekend. There were a lot of positives to take away from the weekend, with both drivers turning in good performances. Leclerc seemed to be on form from the word go, and he ended up starting P3 and running impressively close to both Verstappen and Bottas early on. Had they stopped when the others did, he probably would have taken third rather than losing out to Perez. Carlos Sainz, of course, started from the back due to his engine penalty, but he provided much of the entertainment for the race and carved his way through the field brilliantly, going from 19th up to 8th in a driver of the day performance. The biggest plus for Ferrari seems to be that their new engine upgrade is really working, with the car now not too far away from the pace of Mercedes and Red Bull, at least this weekend, and they were far ahead of their closest rivals McLaren. Ferrari ended up taking 16 points on a day when McLaren could only manage a 7th place, so this result really does reignite that battle for third in the Constructors' Championship, which I have to admit it looked like McLaren had been on for with their recent performances. And although McLaren expected to struggle here, I think they will be still really worried by this performance. After how well he did in Sochi, you would have put Norris down on paper at least to be one of the favourites this weekend, but he only ended up with an anonymous 7th place. Daniel Ricciardo, on the other hand, had a disastrous qualifying, getting knocked out in Q1 before getting stuck in the pack in the race, while Carlos Sainz managed to slice his way up the order. The Aussie did recover to 11th place thanks to his early stop for fresh inters, but this was a really disappointing weekend for him, and it was the kind of weekend we'd come to expect before his Monza victory. McLaren will really be desperately hoping that this is a one-off and he returns to form in the next race. They still hold P3 in the Constructors' Championship for now, but that gap is getting closer and it looks set to go down to the wire, with Ferrari definitely looking stronger with their engine upgrade. And it wasn't just McLaren that struggled in Istanbul on Sunday. Two former world champions had really, really bad races. Fernando Alonso looked set to have a great race qualifying in P5, but he was clipped by Gasly into turn 1 and then earned himself a 5-second penalty the lap after with a clumsy overtake on Mick Schumacher, and from there he made no further progress and ended up in 16th place. He's been on such a good run lately, and he's the type of driver you expect to perform well in these types of conditions, but it was just not meant to be today. Sebastian Vettel has been on a really bad run of late, and this was no exception. He was lurking on the outside of the points early on, but his gamble to put on slicks just seemed absolutely mad considering the amount of spray that was on the circuit. He had no grip, quickly came back in to change to inters, and ended up well down the order, ending any chance of points. And ultimately it was just really surprising because these are two guys that you expect to score points in these types of conditions, and they really had a rough day. However, their younger teammates did have a better day and earned themselves a position in the up column for this week. Stroll really enjoyed himself out there and he scored a solid but uneventful 9th place. He had a strong 7th in Monza as well a few races ago, so it looks like he's really starting to get the better of Vettel, especially in race trim. Esteban Ocon was the only driver not to make a stop, so that definitely earns him a point in the up column. He's been off the boil compared to Alonso in recent races, so this may be a well-timed and well-needed boost for him. His tyres were absolutely ruined by the end of the race and he was actually really lucky to fend off the charging Alfa Romeos by the time he crossed the line. But it was a good day for both Ocon and Stroll, while their older and more experienced teammates really had struggles. And before we tie off some of the loose ends from the weekend, I'm going to give the final up to Pierre Gasly. This was a real return to form for the Frenchman, who outqualified Sergio Perez to start an impressive P4, and he finished a strong 6th ahead of both McLarens and Alpines, and that was despite a harsh penalty for clipping Alonso into turn 1 on the first lap. He also did well to challenge Hamilton in the closing stages, but he couldn't quite get the move done before the Brits' tyres cleaned up. And it's a result that actually keeps AlphaTauri's hopes of catching Alpine in the Constructors' Championship alive, and they've closed the gap down this weekend. So there's a few other good performances that are worth mentioning briefly. The thumbs up for Mick Schumacher, who qualified a career best P14 in a Haas that hasn't had any development this season, and then despite being on the end of a Fernando Alonso dive bomb in the race, he still managed to finish ahead of his teammate Nikita Mazepin. And after a dreadful qualifying, Alfa Romeo did really well to finish 11th and 12th, a whisker away from the points. And a final few disappointing drives, so you would have really tipped Williams and especially George Russell to score here, but they actually only ended up 15th and 17th, which was really disappointing considering their recent form. And Yuki Tsunoda, after reaching Q3, he looked to be back to form, but then he threw away any chance of points with a clumsy spin in the middle of the race. Really disappointing, especially as Gasly went on to score some really solid points for AlphaTauri. So there you have it, those are the ups and downs from lovely Turkish Grand Prix. I'd love to get your thoughts. Let me know what you thought of Lewis Hamilton's strategy decision, what you thought of Bottas's win or Ferrari's return to form. Let me know in the comments, and if you like this video, please like and subscribe. We're a new channel and we really do appreciate any support. We'll have more videos between now and the US Grand Prix, and we'll be back at that race for more ups and downs.